This adopted kid built a $2 trillion empire from the passenger seat of a beat-up Chevy Blazer. He typed out a business plan during a cross-country drive in 1994. 30 years later, his company makes $120 million every single minute. Not from viral products or flashy ads, but from a strategy that crushed entire industries and took over the cloud, the marketplace, even your living room. And just as the regulators came knocking, he vanished. Albuquerque, 1964. In a modest hospital room, a baby was born who would one day make it possible for you to order 600 glow-in-the-dark garden gnomes at 3 a.m. with a single click. His name wasn't Bezos yet, that would come later. His teenage mom, Jackie, was working as a secretary. His biological dad, a circus performer who vanished before little Jeff could even say duh. A few years later, a Cuban immigrant named Miguel Mike Bezos married Jackie, adopted Jeff, and gave him a new last name. That adoption became the origin story of an empire. Even as a kid, Jeff was different. He aced every test, then stared at the stars a little too long while mumbling about colonizing the moon. At his high school graduation, Jeff Bezos stood before the crowd and declared his dream: space hotels and amusement parks in orbit. Everyone clapped politely, then went home wondering whether to be inspired or slightly concerned. Jeff went to Princeton, where he double majored in electrical engineering and computer science. Because why choose just one way to take over the world? He graduated valedictorian, but his brain ran on pure logic, copious amounts of caffeine, and an uncomfortable level of ambition. Still, he was charming in his own intense way, like if the Terminator could crack dad jokes. After college, Jeff bounced around safe, well-paying jobs in the early 90s. Bankers Trust, then a failed telecom startup. Then came D.E. Shaw, a mysterious Wall Street hedge fund that hired brilliantly weird people. Jeff rose to senior VP by age 30, working directly under David Shaw, a man who played 4D chess with financial markets. It was at D.E. Shaw that Jeff met Mackenzie Tuttle, smart, sharp, and willing to marry a guy who thought spreadsheets were romantic. They got engaged just 3 months after their first date. Everything changed when Bezos came across a report that stopped him dead. The internet was growing at 2,300% per year. This wasn't just a tech trend, it was a gravitational force, and Jeff had just discovered escape velocity. Back at D.E. Shaw, Jeff Bezos sat in his office, a spreadsheet glowing on his screen. He had typed out 20 different internet business ideas, each one a potential path to fortune. He considered selling CDs, clothing, even dog food. Each idea had its own line, its own potential, but none of them felt quite right. Then his eyes landed on books. Millions of titles, compact storage, already standardized by ISBN. It was a product category built for the digital age. Bezos would later call books the perfect gateway drug to e-commerce. They were simple, universal, and they hooked customers into a new way of shopping. So Jeff walked into his boss's office at D.E. Shaw and said, "I'm quitting to sell books on the internet." It was a moment of pure conviction. His boss replied, "That sounds like a great idea for someone who doesn't already have a good job." But Jeff wasn't looking for permission, he was announcing his departure. Jeff packed up his entire life, convinced his wife Mackenzie to quit her job too, and they prepared to leave New York behind for an uncertain future in Seattle. They climbed into their beat-up Chevy Blazer and started the cross-country drive from New York to Seattle. The road stretched ahead, full of possibility. While Mackenzie drove, Jeff sat in the passenger seat, typing out the Amazon business plan on his laptop. The future of commerce was being written at 65 miles per hour. Somewhere along Interstate 80, between endless cornfields and truck stops, the foundation of the world's largest online retailer was laid out in bullet points. The company almost wasn't called Amazon. Jeff's first choice was Cadabra, as in abracadabra, until his lawyer misheard it as cadaver, not ideal for selling cookbooks. He also considered Relentless, which he liked so much he bought the domain. Even today, typing relentless.com redirects to Amazon. Try it. Finally, he settled on Amazon. It started with A, so it would top alphabetized lists. Plus, the Amazon was the biggest river in the world, and Jeff didn't want to build a bookstore, he wanted to build the everything store. He wanted the everything store, not just books, but everything. The name itself was a promise that one day, you could buy anything from Amazon, from books to dog food to lawnmowers. Back then, there was no AWS, no Alexa, no Prime. Just a man in a garage with a dream, a fax machine, and a laugh that sounded like a hyena inhaling nitrous oxide. But this wasn't just another startup. This was the beginning of a 30-year siege on retail, logistics, and cloud computing. A war that would reshape the entire economy. He was a founder with no fear, no limits, and a methodical plan to reshape the entire economy. The world had no idea what was about to hit it. Summer 1994. Bezos officially founded Amazon with $10,000 in seed money from his parents. That money came from his parents' retirement fund. They bet their future on their son's crazy idea to sell books on the internet. His office setup was legendary, a desk made from a door bolted to 2x4s. Plain, functional, and perfectly symbolizing the company's obsession with frugality. Every dollar saved was a dollar that could be pumped back into growth. Frugality wasn't a constraint, it was a weapon. In July 1995, the Amazon website went live. The digital doors opened to the world. The next day, someone ordered Fluid Concepts and Creative Analogies, a dense technical book about artificial intelligence. Not exactly a bestseller, but it was a start. In those early days, Bezos would ring a bell in the office for every single sale. Until they were getting so many orders, they had to stop because the bell never stopped ringing. Within weeks of the website going live, customers from all 50 states and over 40 countries were placing orders, the bell ringing for every sale until it never stopped. Jeff realized he wasn't just selling books, he was selling access, efficiency, and most importantly, time, a commodity far more valuable than any single product. His philosophy was brutally simple: get big, fast. There was no time for polish, just pure urgency, with code written by sleep-deprived employees and orders packed by people still learning the software. Mistakes were constant. At one point, a textbook was accidentally listed for $23 million. But perfection wasn't the goal. Speed was everything in those early days. Speed was valued over perfection, creating a chaotic but electric atmosphere where every order felt like a victory, and every error was just a lesson for the next sprint. In 1997, Amazon went public, despite still not being profitable, raising $54 million in its IPO and betting everything on future growth. Wall Street analysts were deeply skeptical. One famously called it Amazon.toast, predicting the company would be crushed by established players like Barnes & Noble. Bezos had a different message for investors. Think long-term growth, not short-term profit, a mantra that would eventually reward believers beyond their wildest dreams. Around this time, Bezos launched something that would define Amazon forever: customer reviews, letting buyers openly criticize products on the company's own website, a move most retailers thought was insane. The bet paid off. Transparency built trust and loyalty, turning Amazon into a destination where customers didn't just buy but browsed, researched, and compared, creating engagement far more valuable than any single sale. From books, Amazon expanded relentlessly into CDs, DVDs, toys, and electronics, each new category adding fuel to the fire of its rapid growth. By the end of the 90s, Amazon wasn't just a bookstore anymore, it was becoming a digital everything store, with revenue exploding and traffic surging as Wall Street fell in love. Revenue was exploding, traffic was surging, Wall Street was falling in love. Amazon had become the poster child of the new economy. In 2000, Bezos made a move that seemed counterintuitive. He launched Amazon Marketplace, inviting third-party sellers to compete directly on Amazon's platform. Most people thought he was crazy. Why invite competition? But Jeff saw the bigger picture. Marketplace let Amazon grow its catalog without holding inventory. More importantly, it gave the company an incredible source of data about what customers actually wanted. That same year, Amazon started acquiring companies strategically. Alexa Internet for web analytics, Audible for audiobooks, eventually Zappos for shoes and their legendary company culture. Later, Kiva Systems for warehouse robots because humans are slow and unfortunately require healthcare and bathroom breaks. Amazon wasn't just selling things anymore, it was designing every single step of how things got sold, shipped, and reviewed. But just when Amazon seemed unstoppable, disaster struck. March 2000, the dot-com bubble burst. Tech stocks imploded overnight. The wild optimism of the 90s curdled into pure fear, and Amazon, still burning money and showing no profit, suddenly found itself on Wall Street's hit list. The stock crashed from over $100 to just $6. Headlines screamed Amazon.com bomb. Analysts predicted bankruptcy within months. The company that once rang bells for every sale was now setting off alarm bells across the entire industry. Inside Amazon, the mood was dark. Layoffs came in waves. Perks disappeared, side projects got axed. The grand vision of the everything store suddenly looked like an expensive fantasy built on nothing but hype and venture capital fumes. For Bezos, the crash was deeply personal. He had convinced the world that Amazon wasn't a gamble, it was the inevitable future. Now that future was hanging by a thread, but instead of panicking or looking for a bailout, he went cold, surgical. He slashed the burn rate, streamlined operations, cut entire teams. This was Amazon's crucible, the moment that would either kill the company or forge it into something unbreakable. Most of Amazon's .com peers, Pets.com, eToys, Webvan, vanished into digital oblivion. Amazon barely survived, but it did survive. And in surviving, it transformed into something much more dangerous than it had been before. Amazon barely survived the .com crash, but in doing so, it transformed into something far more dangerous, a lean, hardened machine forged in the fire of near collapse. By 2002, Bezos had a new obsession: build faster, scale harder, and never get caught off guard again. The lesson of the crash was etched into every decision. Massive fulfillment centers rose across the country: Nevada, Kentucky, Ohio, each one a fortress of efficiency, designed to process orders at a scale never seen before. Inside these warehouses, the chaotic energy of the garage days was replaced by something colder: conveyor belts, barcode scanners, robotic arms, and software that tracked every package, every person, every second. This wasn't just e-commerce anymore. This was the birth of a logistical empire, precise, relentless, and designed to make speed the new normal. Then came the kill shot. 2005, Amazon Prime launched, unlimited 2-day shipping, no minimum order. It felt like pure convenience to customers. To competitors, it looked like financial suicide. Industry analysts scoffed. Free shipping on everything? They'll bleed money and be dead within a year. But they had no idea what Bezos was actually building. Bezos knew something they didn't. Prime wasn't a customer perk. It was a psychological trap, designed to lock customers in, not just serve them. And it worked beautifully. Customers who joined Prime didn't just stay, they transformed. They bought more, clicked faster, stopped comparing prices elsewhere. Customer loyalty wasn't being earned through great service, it was being systematically engineered, a behavioral loop designed to make leaving unthinkable. 2007, the Kindle. Amazon took aim at books again, but this time they weren't just changing where people bought them, they were changing what books actually were. Critics called it clunky and awkward, but readers devoured it anyway. Within a few years, independent bookstores were shuttering, and entire publishing models collapsed. Independent bookstores shuttered across the country. The quiet collapse of a century-old industry, accelerated by a single device and a relentless algorithm. Entire publishing business models collapsed overnight. Amazon had quietly, efficiently replaced paper with pixels. The printed page became a relic of a bygone era. By the mid-2000s, Amazon's own tech teams were drowning. The company's explosive growth had created a monster: servers buckling, engineers scrambling, chaos behind the polished storefront. So they built something new: modular infrastructure, flexible storage, elastic computing power that could scale up or down instantly. It solved their own scaling problem and changed everything. In 2006, that internal project quietly launched to the public: Amazon Web Services. What had started as an emergency fix became a weapon. The world's biggest companies lined up to buy cloud space. AWS soon powered Netflix, NASA, the CIA, and even parts of Walmart's operations. The very giants Amazon had been fighting were now dependent on its infrastructure. While companies fought to survive Amazon's retail dominance, they were unknowingly paying rent to use Amazon's own servers. The hunter had become the landlord. Bezos hadn't just built a store, he built the backbone of the entire internet. Every click, every stream, every transaction, it all ran through his architecture. Then things got controversial. Third-party sellers flooded into Amazon's marketplace, and many noticed something disturbing. Products that performed well would suddenly face eerily similar Amazon-branded competition. Same features, lower prices, better search placement. Sellers started whispering, then shouting. Amazon was using their own data to clone successful businesses and crush the very people who made them successful. Amazon denied any wrongdoing, calling it coincidence rather than strategy. But to outsiders, it looked like a platform systematically devouring its own ecosystem. Sellers accused the platform of devouring its own ecosystem. The marketplace that had given them opportunity was now competing against them with their own secrets. Bezos didn't just compete, he studied his rivals like specimens, cataloging their strengths and weaknesses before absorbing what worked and discarding what didn't. The body count was staggering. Borders, Circuit City, Toys R Us, Radio Shack, giants that had dominated retail for decades collapsed under the pressure Amazon had helped create. Even Walmart, once considered untouchable, was forced to completely rebuild itself from the ground up, just to compete with the relentless Amazon machine. Inside Amazon, meetings were lean and structured. PowerPoint was banned. Bezos insisted on 6-page written memos that demanded actual thought, logic, and data. His mantra was simple: good intentions don't work, mechanisms do. Emotion didn't drive decisions, systems did. His most famous line, "Your margin is my opportunity," wasn't just a clever slogan, it was a threat to every competitor in his path. Entire industries began restructuring themselves just to avoid becoming the next Amazon case study. Amazon evolved from a company into a machine optimized for everything: pricing, fulfillment, recommendation algorithms, even customer behavior itself. Prime didn't just lock in customers, it conditioned them, training millions to expect speed, simplicity, and invisible efficiency. Once adapted, there was no going back. At the center of it all was Bezos, part brilliant engineer, part military strategist, running a machine that never stopped. Amazon wasn't just a marketplace anymore, it had become the invisible infrastructure of modern capitalism itself. But no machine runs forever, and Bezos, he was already building his exit strategy. By the late 2010s, Jeff Bezos wasn't just wealthy, he was richer than entire nations, more influential than most world leaders. The guy who once packed books in a garage now controlled a global empire touching nearly every aspect of modern life. The physical transformation was just as striking. Gone was the awkward tech nerd with the goofy laugh. The new Bezos was bald, jacked, and carried himself with the quiet, unshakable confidence of someone who had bent reality to his will. Less startup founder, more final boss of capitalism. In 2017, Amazon announced its biggest acquisition yet, Whole Foods, for $13.70 billion. It wasn't just about selling organic kale, it was about reimagining logistics entirely. Overnight, physical stores became distribution nodes. Traditional checkout lines were replaced by app-based scanning. Customers walked in for produce and walked out as unwitting participants in an efficiency experiment. Every move tracked, every purchase logged, every shelf optimized. By this point, Amazon had tentacles in everything: news with the Washington Post, entertainment with Twitch and Prime Video, healthcare with Amazon Care, smart homes with Alexa. One by one, entire industries found themselves operating in Amazon's shadow. Inside Amazon's warehouses, reports surfaced of grueling working conditions, impossible quotas, constant surveillance, workers collapsing from exhaustion. Critics described fulfillment centers as digital sweatshops. Employees started referring to their handheld scanners as the wristbands of Sauron, a darkly humorous nod to the constant tracking, the unblinking eye that watched every move, every second of every shift. Yet somehow, the machine kept running. Orders still arrived on time. The system held together, a relentless, almost inhuman efficiency that ignored the human cost beneath. Regulators were circling. Lawmakers raised increasingly loud alarms about Amazon's dominance, accusing the company of crushing small sellers, manipulating search results, and weaponizing private seller data to destroy competition. In 2020, for the first time in his career, Bezos was summoned to testify before Congress. The world watched as the architect of the everything store sat calmly before a panel of lawmakers, defending Amazon's practices with the same methodical precision he'd used to build the company. The subtext was unmistakable. You've built something incredibly powerful, now we need to know who it actually serves. The question hung in the air: was Amazon a tool for customers, or a machine that consumed everything in its path? Then, almost anticlimactically, it ended. February 2021, Bezos announced he was stepping down as CEO. No scandal, no crisis, just a quiet handoff to Andy Jassy, the head of AWS. After 27 years, the architect of Amazon was exiting day-to-day operations. In February 2021, Bezos announced he was stepping down as CEO, handing control to Andy Jassy, the head of AWS, after 27 years at the helm. There was no scandal, no crisis, just a calm handoff, like a master craftsman finishing a project and quietly walking away. Bezos pivoted fully to his original obsession: space. Blue Origin, the rocket company he had quietly funded for years, became his new focus. He envisioned reusable rockets, lunar landers, and massive orbital habitats, thinking bigger than any headline-chasing space tourism stunt. He called Earth a beautiful place you can visit, casually proposing that all heavy industry move off-planet to keep the home world pristine. His marriage to Mackenzie ended in what became the most expensive divorce in history, a split that made headlines worldwide. Mackenzie walked away with $36 billion and immediately began giving most of it away, becoming one of the most prolific philanthropists of the decade. Bezos made headlines for a different reason. A $500 million super yacht so large it required a second support yacht just to function. The internet had a field day with mockery, but Bezos didn't seem to care. He just kept building, unbothered by the noise. Because Earth was never the endgame for the stargazing kid who dreamed of space hotels at his high school graduation. Amazon was just the launch pad.